Hello CASEF judges. This is my project I titled Antacid and Uncle Heartburn. This year when I was looking for a project, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. So I talked to my science teacher and we discussed some ideas, but I still wasn't really interested in anything we talked about. So he sent me home with lots of books that had experiments that he uses in his AP Chem classes. So I sat down and looked through all the books, and I got inspiration from one of the experiments to create this project. My objective for this project is to determine which antacid is the most effective at neutralizing hydrochloric acid, and the hydrochloric acid was used to mimic the stomach acid. I did a lot of background research for this project. I had to research antacids, why people use them, and how they work. So after I understood antacids and how they worked and what they did, I went to the store and bought 4 different brands of antacid that each had a different type of antacid ingredient in them. And then I went home and analyzed the ingredients, how much of each ingredient was in the antacid, and then I used that information to determine my hypothesis, which is that Alka-Seltzer would be the most effective at neutralizing hydrochloric acid because it has the largest amount of antacid products in it. For my experiment, I used the recommended dosage for each antacid that was given on the box. I would crush the antacid pill into a powder, and then I would mix the powder into distilled water so the distilled water wouldn't affect the pH. Then I took a pH test strip and tested the solution for its pH and recorded the data. Then I would add 5 milliliters of hydrochloric acid at a time, and after each time I added 5 milliliters of hydrochloric acid, I would take the pH of the water with the water solution and record the pH. For each one, I added 5 milliliters of hydrochloric acid until I got to 100 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. For Pepsid AC, I went back and did it again, but only adding 1 milliliter of hydrochloric acid at a time because its pH changed so drastically so quickly. Later, I went back to my research and researched Pepsid AC some more because its test results were so different. And I learned that Pepsid AC was actually not an antacid. It was more of a blocking agent, which would explain the results. Then, after I collected all of my data, I went and made graphs and charts and tables to help me organize my data and see what I had. And then I wrote my results and my conclusion. My conclusion agreed with my hypothesis that Alka-Seltzer was the most effective at neutralizing hydrochloric acid, followed by Tums and Rolaids, and then Pepsid AC. If I were to do this project again, I would make a few changes and upgrades. And for example, instead of using the pH test strips, I would use a pH probe so my data was a little more accurate. And then I would do the test multiple more times. So for this experiment, I only tested each antacid once, but if I were to do this again, I would definitely do it multiple times. And then I would also test more antacids. Thank you for listening to my project on antacid and Uncle Heartburn.